She didn't beg, she didn't explain, she just walked away. There were no harsh words, no drama, not even a slammed door. Just one morning, her scent was still on the pillow, but her presence was gone. And somehow, that silence, it still echoes, louder than any goodbye I've ever heard. I used to think I had control. I thought I knew what women wanted. I believed that if I worked hard, provided, stayed loyal, that would be enough. But she didn't need me. She didn't wait for me. And she didn't stay just to protect my comfort. Years later, I still think about her, not the one who smiled politely, not the one who asked for nothing, but the one who challenged me without saying a word, the one who made me feel something I couldn't name. What is it about a woman like that? That makes her unforgettable, but the question stays with you. Why her? Why does the memory of that one woman still press into your thoughts like a fingerprint you can't wipe off? It's because it didn't end with a fight, it didn't explode, it faded, quietly and then completely. And that kind of ending, it lingers. It starts with small things. She still brings you a cup of coffee, still folds the laundry, still kisses you on the cheek before bed. But her gaze, it no longer lingers. Her voice, gentle but distant. She listens, but no longer leans in. You convince yourself it's nothing. Maybe she's tired. Maybe it's age. Maybe you're both just coasting after all these years. But deep down, something in you shifts. She's no longer fighting with you because she's no longer fighting for you. Her silence isn't punishment, it's clarity. And that clarity, it cuts deeper than any insult ever could. You used to believe that if you worked hard, stayed loyal, kept things steady, that would be enough. But what do you do when none of that is what she wants anymore? And it hits you one morning in the space between the bed and the coffee pot. She's still here, technically, but she's already gone, and you don't know how to reach her, or worse, if she even wants to be reached anymore. And yet you can't stop thinking about her because some silences never leave you. I remember her, not her perfume, not the way she looked in heels, but the way she never needed my approval to exist. She didn't shrink herself to keep me comfortable. She didn't apologize for being too much, too loud, too wild, too real. I met her at 47, divorced, cautious, still licking my wounds from a marriage that died quietly over years, and there she was, like a gust of wind that didn't knock on the door before it came in. She didn't flirt the way other women did. No slow smiles, no small talk. She asked direct questions. She held long eye contact. She wasn't trying to please me. She was trying to see me, and I wasn't ready. At dinner, she told me stories that made me laugh, and then pause. She spoke about her past like she owned every scar. No shame, no victimhood. She said, "I've broken hearts, I've had mine broken, but I never lied to myself about what I wanted." And that hit me, because I had. I had spent years in a marriage where I kept things safe. I didn't ask too many questions. I didn't rock the boat. I showed up, paid the bills, kept the peace. But peace, I've learned, isn't the absence of conflict. It's the presence of connection. And with her, every word, every silence, every touch, it meant something. Not because she chased me, but because she challenged me. She didn't care about what I did for a living. She wanted to know what kept me up at night. She wanted to see the man behind the mask I wore so well, and when I couldn't give her that, when I hesitated, played it cool, tried to stay in control, she didn't beg. She left, not with a fight, not with tears. One morning, she said, "You're a good man, but I won't shrink myself to fit your comfort," and she walked out of my life like she walked in, without asking permission. At the time, I told myself she was too much, too emotional, too intense, too unwilling to compromise. But the truth, she wasn't too much. She was just more than I was ready to receive. And that's what haunts me, because she saw something in me that I wasn't brave enough to show. And when she realized I wasn't going to meet her there, she didn't stay and hope I would catch up. She left to protect her own fire. She didn't just leave me. She left behind a mirror, one I've been looking into ever since. A mirror that showed me how I'd lived half alive, half seen, half felt, and called it love. That's why I can't forget her, not because of the passion, not even the pain, but because she made me feel something I didn't have words for yet. And when she walked away, she took nothing with her, except the version of me I could have been. I didn't understand it at the time, not fully, but years later when I started reading Carl Jung, everything clicked. Jung talked about something called the shadow, the hidden part of ourselves we deny, reject, or suppress, the anger we're not proud of, the vulnerability we never show, the truth we avoid because it threatens the image we've built. And when we meet someone who lives unapologetically, who says what they feel, who doesn't hide their flaws or edit themselves for approval, that part of us stirs. We don't know why we're drawn to her. We just know she feels different. But it's not really her we're obsessed with. It's what she represents, the part of ourselves we've buried. Jung called it anima projection. Every man carries an inner feminine, his anima, and when he hasn't integrated her, he projects her onto a woman. He doesn't see her, he sees his missing pieces. He thinks he's in love, but what he's really feeling is awakening. She's emotional, he's repressed, she's free, he's guarded. She says what she needs. He's never even asked himself the question, and when he meets her, it's like looking into sunlight for the first time after years underground. It blinds him, it overwhelms him, and part of him wants to run because facing your shadow isn't comfortable, it's disorienting, so he labels her. She's too intense. She's too much. She's trying to control me, but deep down he knows she's not dangerous, she's real, and real is terrifying when you've been performing most of your life. We're not taught to feel, we're taught to fix, to function, to provide. But that kind of masculinity is hollow if it's disconnected from truth, and women like her, they demand truth. They won't settle for surface, they won't play the game, they won't stay quiet just to keep the peace. And because of that, they force you to face yourself, to confront the parts of you you've been avoiding for decades. She didn't destroy you, she revealed you. And here's the paradox. The more you try to forget her, the deeper she settles in, because the pain she left wasn't her fault. It was the pain of meeting the version of yourself you never had the courage to become. So when we call her bad, what we're really saying is, she didn't make it. Easy for me to stay asleep. And in that way, she was the most honest person you ever met, not a bad woman, but a mirror, a challenge, a door you weren't ready to walk through. But maybe now, you are. It took me years to stop resenting her. At first, I blamed her for the confusion she left behind. I told myself she was selfish, emotionally reckless. I even convinced myself she enjoyed the power she had over me. But that was just my ego, fighting to stay intact, because the truth was harder to swallow. She wasn't punishing me. She was waking me up. She didn't ask for too much. She asked for the real me, and I couldn't give it to her. Not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't know how. When a man spends most of his life being useful, steady, strong, he forgets how to be vulnerable. He learns to measure his worth by what he does, not who he is, and that's where it falls apart, because women like her, they don't want a checklist, they want a connection, they want presence, not performance, they want truth, not tactics, and when they don't feel you there with them, not just physically, but emotionally, they leave, not to destroy you, but to protect their own soul, and you don't realize it until the house is quiet, until you're pouring coffee alone, until you find an old text thread and realize, she wasn't asking for more from you. She was asking for you. And that hurts, because you weren't ready. But what if that pain has a purpose? What if she was the exact experience your soul needed to stop hiding behind the mask you've worn for decades? What if she was the one person who loved you enough to walk away when you wouldn't? Step forward. That's not cruelty, that's courage. And maybe, just maybe, you didn't lose her. Maybe she gave you something more lasting than a relationship, a mirror, a wake-up call, a key to a deeper part of yourself. But here's the catch. That key only works if you stop blaming her and start becoming the man she was trying to meet. There's a moment that comes after the grief, after the confusion, the anger, the shame. It's quiet, it doesn't announce itself, but it changes everything. It's the moment you stop asking, "Why did she leave?" and begin asking, "What did she show me before she left?" That's the doorway. Carl Jung called this the beginning of individuation, when a man starts becoming whole. Not perfect, not heroic, but real. It begins with a breakdown, not of your life, but of your illusions. The illusion that being stoic means being strong. The illusion that women want safety more than depth. The illusion that being chosen means being loved. You realize she didn't fall for you because you were safe. She fell for you because something in you sparked, a hunger, a question, a crack in your armor, and maybe she left. Not because she stopped loving you, but because she knew staying would keep you from growing. That's not the story we're told. We're told the bad woman ruins men, but what if she resurrects them? What if her refusal to be controlled, her emotional honesty, her unwillingness to play small, wasn't rebellion, but reflection? She didn't abandon you. She rejected the version of you that wasn't fully alive, and in doing so, she gave you a map, a painful, beautiful, necessary map to parts of yourself you forgot existed. The boy who wanted to be seen, the man who longs to be vulnerable but doesn't know how, the father, the lover, the seeker inside of you, buried under years of responsibility and silence. And that's where the rebirth begins, not by chasing her, not by replacing her, but by sitting in the space she left behind and listening to the questions, to the ache, to the parts of you that stir when there's nothing left to distract you. You don't become a better man by erasing the past. You become one by integrating it, by facing the shadow she awakened, by owning the feelings you were taught to bury. Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And maybe that's what she did. She made your unconscious conscious. She shattered the fantasy you were living in, the one where emotional distance passes for maturity and silence counts as strength. She called you out of the cave. And the journey isn't easy. You'll be tempted to slip back into numbness, to distract, to explain, to rewrite the story in your favor. But if you stay in the fire long enough, you'll start to see what she saw in you all along. Not just the man who paid the bills, not the man who kept it together, but the man who could feel deeply, the man who could love with presence, the man who could finally let go of control and choose truth instead. And when that man finally stands up, he doesn't chase the woman who left. He thanks her, not because he lost her, but because she led him back to himself. Maybe you've met her too, the woman who didn't stay, not because she stopped caring, but because she refused to betray herself just to be loved halfway. She didn't yell, she didn't beg, she simply walked out of your life and into your memory, and even now, decades later, you still feel the ripple, not because of the chaos she caused, but because of the clarity she left behind. So here's the question no one ever asks us as men. What if she didn't leave you? What if she left the version of you that never really showed up? And what if, just maybe, that was the most honest, painful gift you've ever been given? Carl Jung once said, "You do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." She wasn't your enemy, she was your shadow's mirror, and maybe, just maybe, she was your wake-up call. So I'll ask you this. Have you ever been loved by a woman who didn't need you, but still made you feel truly seen? Leave a comment. Tell your story, even if it's unfinished, because you're not alone in this, and sometimes the stories we bury are the ones another man needs to hear just to breathe again.